Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Hashtag Leadership, What's on Your Mind. Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey, and we're going to add value by bringing great people with great stories and experts in their field. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, make sure you follow us on your podcast provider. We are getting very close to our 100th episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that coming up very soon. So today we are speaking to David. How are you doing, sir?
I'm not too bad, Stuart. How are you?
Yeah, fab. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me. I know David through the Institute of Directors. You're in the Liverpool branch, and really kind of positive impact that I've seen from being a member for the last few years, and obviously now stepping into the interim chair role. You've done a fantastic job from my perspective of being a member and having some great events, and also sitting down with some amazing people and talking about their stories as well. So as well as your business, I'm really interested to hear your perspective on some of the people that you've had a chance to speak to. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, we do have a lot to fit in. If you could just introduce yourself for the people who don't know who you are.
Okay, so my name is David Wafer. I am the Managing Director of McIver Recruitment. I'm also, as Stuart's already alluded to, Chair of the Institute of Directors in the Liverpool City region. And I'm involved in two other things. I'm on the advisory board of the LFC Foundation, and I'm on the advisory board of Liverpool Chamber for my sins. So that's me. I'm Sagittarius as well, if that helps.
That all the information, like it, lay it out there. So we asked people 3 questions. So before we forget, let's go there. So obviously hashtag leadership, what's on your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear the word leadership?
I think for me, leadership's about setting a vision and a direction. Often people get confused between leadership and management, and that they are very different things. Management is about literally managing the tasks and the things to get done, whereas leadership is about creating that vision and taking people along with you. If you want to get things done, then you need to lead the way, and hopefully that, in my mind, that should always be by example.
Yeah, fantastic, awesome. So staying with you personally, we've asked people, where do you think your leadership journey started? So whether it's on reflection, now that you're sat here being asked about it, or there was a light bulb moment at the time and you sat down and went, right, this is where it starts, and you were very conscious of it. So how far back are we going?
Well, I'd probably say we're probably looking, maybe 25 years ago. I know what you're thinking, Stuart. I don't look old enough, but I
did the surprise face there for you. Just
yeah, exactly. Well done for feigning that. I think that for me, in a strange way, a lot of the first kind of thoughts around leadership and management, because they do intertwine, were really through observing colleagues and managers that I had that in truth weren't very good, and that I think that you can actually learn an awful lot from people who don't naturally have those skills. And that I think if I think back to then, I think a lot of the time I'd be observing things which I'd be thinking, oh, that doesn't really sit particularly well with me, and I'd see the knock-on impact that would have on people. And I can remember one leader in the business that we used to comically nickname Paraffin, because anytime there was a difficult situation to deal with, they'd just go and make it much worse, and it kind of blow up as a result. So I think for me, that journey, it's not very profound in that sense, but probably started when looking at things that I thought, well, I wouldn't handle it that way, and how would I handle it? And then once that kind of starts in your mind, then I think that the journey becomes a natural progression.
Yeah, I like that. And I would say that from all these episodes, obviously coming up to 100, the majority of people quote the fact that they've seen it done badly, or in their mind, not very well, is the reason why they're really good at leadership right now. Their self-awareness to actually see and identify the impact that has had. And that surprises me a little bit, because you would think that somebody who is in a really good leadership, who's smashing the sort of leadership bubble title, if you like, that they'd had a privileged upbringing on great leadership around them. So it's good that you've sort of identified that again, really, in your story. So talking about impact of leadership, we always ask people, or we've asked people recently about, is there somebody or something that has had that real big impact on your leadership journey as you sit here now, whether it's positive or negative?
I think it'd be difficult to tie down one particular person. I think for me, I've often felt that I've developed and achieved most by people who gave me space to lead. And I think that at the time, I didn't necessarily fully appreciate that. I kind of thought, well, look, they allow me to crack on and get on with the culture that I want to create, whether it be in a part of the business that I run, or whether it be in an actual individual business unit that I run. And I think that only when you then work with somebody who's the complete polar opposite and doesn't want to give you the space and is the equivalent, of a micromanager, that you actually then appreciate them retrospectively. And so I think that, when I speak to an awful lot of people, obviously in recruitment, one of the things that comes up time and time again is that they have all of the responsibility, but they don't have the autonomy. So I think that for me, it's those that have given me the autonomy to actually lead in the past that have actually helped me to blossom, which is probably why I work for myself now.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? Quite a few times, I love that, by the way, about just calling it giving you space, because how often do we hear, like, don't overcomplicate things? How simplistic is that as advice and guidance for people listening that want to level up their leadership, and just give people space and that little bit of autonomy? How powerful that can be.
Totally. And I think that, there's a view that you can either allow people the space to step up, or you can smother them and kind of force them down a step. And a lot of the time then people don't grow, and people don't, get comfortable in their own skin and learn through some of the mistakes. Yes, you want somebody to be able to bounce off. Yes, you want somebody to be able to ask for advice. Because nobody knows it all, and it's a very dangerous pattern if people start to feel that they do. But you also need that encouragement and a kind of a sage person to, which I was lucky enough over the years, to have 2 or 3 people to go and have a conversation with as and when I needed. But it was very much on that basis. It wasn't a case of, you were being forced into a particular style.
Yeah. Awesome. So I alluded to in my introduction the fact of, with you having the IOD and Liverpool branch, and from my time spending time at some of your events, it was really quite interesting to see the amount of great people in the room and the great people being interviewed. From your part, I really want to ask you, sort of, what have you gained from spending time in these amazing rooms with amazing people? Obviously, I love storytelling. I've learned a lot from having the podcast and having amazing people come on and talk about their story. What some of the things have you picked up over the time that you've, we were talking just before we jumped on about your network is your net worth, like the amount of people that you spend time with. What have you gained moving forwards now with the people, whether you name them specifically or whether you generalize? Where would you go with that?
I think for me, I've been, and you mentioned it there, exceptionally lucky in that we've had some great speakers and some fabulous people that I've interviewed, and really hearing their business and career stories. And one of the things that I've tried to do as well is to understand where their journey has started. So a lot of the time, what we know about the careers relatively is out there. Yes, we're going to delve into it. But I've wanted to understand, for example, when we sat down with Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, that, it's fairly commonly known he comes from a working class background, but he lived in an area of Kirby, which is a relatively deprived area. He was one of 8 kids. And understanding some of the challenges that brought, and how he's developed his career over time, is a fascinating thing to learn. And then we've got people like Nisha Katona, who was a barrister to a restaurateur, and understanding that her family thought she was mad when she packed in being a barrister to set up some restaurants, and really seeing how those skills have been adaptable, and that have been able to change it. I obviously see that on the recruitment front, but a lot of clients will be blinkered in that, well, somebody can't just change from one thing to another. Well, really, if you look at the skills, what it shows you is that lots of people can do if they're given the opportunity. And if I think probably one of the speakers that grabbed certainly most of my attention, and probably because of the profile of their network, was Peter Moore, who was the former chief exec of Liverpool Football Club. He'd previously worked for Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. He launched the Xbox 360. And, I asked him about sliding doors moments in his career, things that had maybe happened. And, if he'd taken one decision or another, where might it have led? And he talked about when the Xbox 360 launched, they had what they called a red ring of death, where the hardware failed on them. And they made a decision to recall every single one. And he said that the FedEx charge for them worldwide was over £1 billion. And you kind of, it puts into perspective the scale in which obviously he was working. And he went on to tell us about, if he hadn't have made that decision, the industry and the gaming industry now is phenomenal, in terms of its size and scale, and that if they wouldn't have made that decision, the reality is that device wouldn't exist. It would have died, and wouldn't have really made a success of it as the future. So they could have taken it one way or another. So they're just some of the people. Gerald Ratner's story, which is well documented, about his famous quotes actually at an IOD dinner in London, when he joked, and he was joking, about the quality of his jewelry, and it cost him his business empire and his job, that he built up a worldwide network. So there's been some fabulous people that there's nuggets and gems that you pick up along the way, as well as it's a complete privilege to sit down with them and understand their story. One of the more recent ones, the back end of last year, I sat down with Steve Morgan, who is a very unassuming, down-to-earth individual, who started Redrow and grew it from scratch to a £2 billion plus company. But I think what is fabulous about it is that he's donated over £300 million to charity. And what a story, that is. Recently donated £50 million to diabetes research. The inspirational aspect of people being down to earth and talking to them about things that they maybe struggle with, as well as things they achieved. You can hear a penny drop in the room, but also it fires you up and inspires you to think this is possible.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to dig a little deeper on one thing that you've said a couple of times, that it comes up with what I'm doing as well. Some people say, how have you got some of the people on? Lots of different levels of success. And I say, well, I just ask nicely, and they're just people. Like, sometimes they can be, I'm going to say, product of their success, probably not the right thing, but it's really nice to actually just ask questions, and people are quite open to answer and offer their story and offer their advice and guidance in the right time. But what was your perspective on all these people? We're just all human beings, aren't we? We're all just wanting to share and help each other along.
Totally. I think that, despite all the success of all the numerous people that I've spoken to, there is also at the core a human side to them, and I won't name them, but there's been some speakers, ones I haven't mentioned there, where there has been a kind of fragility, and a human fragility, in terms of asking, okay, what will they cover, and lots of the doubts and fears that we all would have. And I think when I first started doing it a number of years ago, I kind of was initially a little bit surprised. I was like, oh, right, okay, look at them with all their success and with the, huge profile, and what a career they've had. But they're still asking all the questions that that we naturally feel. And I can remember one in particular, asking me, "Oh, did that go okay? Are you sure? How do you think that was well received?" And I'm thinking, well, they weren't clamoring for attention or for ego boost. I think that they genuinely were wondering, okay, was that okay? Did it not let you down? And I'm thinking, wow, that I still have people, that particular speaker, I still have people come up to me now and say, wow, that was such a journey, because in actual fact, it really was a roller coaster, where they actually ended up crying on a couple of occasions and were very raw about the part of their story. And I felt really privileged to be part of that. I was like, wow, I'm sitting here talking about this. So I think that sharing people's journeys is a privilege.
Yeah. So we've got under 5 minutes left. I want to ask you how important leadership is right now in recruitment.
Okay. So I mean, the two sides of it, leadership has never been more important, because sadly, on a national level, many would say that we're struggling from a lack of leadership, and that the standards of leadership in public life have certainly taken a battering in recent times. So we need people to set a vision, to be a beacon of hope and light, to help us in that journey. And I think that how that then fits in within recruitment directly, and the challenges that the businesses are facing. Businesses, I've never found it harder to recruit for two reasons. One, because the world of work has changed, with hybrid working and so on. If people can walk the dog and pick the kids up from school, then they don't really feel the same need to have that impact and get into the office and so on. And also, as a result, they then don't want to move in the same kind of numbers, because lots of the frustrations are not the same. Because a lot of the time, we're talking about leadership, a lot of the time we leave roles because of either a lack of leadership or poor management. So because of those two things, if you're only in the office 2 days a week, that some of those things aren't quite as pressing, because you're not having to see it and experience it every day. So there's that side of it to consider, as well as you then got to factor in that, okay, if there's not the right leadership to attract people in the first place, then your business will suffer, through a lack of efficiency, a lack of productivity, and ultimately a lack of profitability, because you won't have the right people who make a huge difference in your business.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? We were almost watching this. I talked about a leadership shift. Like, there was a little bit of a lag, as I called it, still back to one of the episodes we talked about, back to the Industrial Revolution of leadership. There is still people displaying some of those traits, and it's a real shift in the last 2 years. What do you feel that the future of good leadership is going to look like in the modern, I call it the new norm now, but that shift, like, we are moving quite quickly, aren't we? But in your perspective, what does that look like in the future?
Well, I think, we touched upon earlier about, emotional intelligence, and that those businesses and leaders that don't have that will really risk being left behind. We all know at the really senior end of businesses, kind of narcissistic tendencies and traits, do play a part, in lots of leaders, and that unless that is balanced, and also the effort is made from those individuals to evolve, and that yes, the drive, the tenacity has helped them get there, but unless they embrace the people and the emotional intelligence to actually keep their business on track, they're really going to face challenges in terms of retention, and as it will be harder than ever to recruit those people, then that will start to see a demise of their business and ultimately their success and their leadership. And I think that once people then get found out as such, then the trust ebbs away, and that is very difficult to to maintain performance in any way.
Yeah, I love that. A great way to, in a positive way, finish the podcast. That's 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Like you say,
time
that's a
flies.
real thing that we're looking at, is a big investment in people to push that retention. I think it's the first time and the biggest time ever where people are really looking at investing in the people, which is fantastic. A real shift forward in that journey. So David, thank you so much for your story and your insights. So as ever, ladies and gents, make sure you reach out, tell us what your takeaways were. Every episode is really interesting to hear what people have got from that. Everybody takes something different, and that's okay. Remember, every Wednesday at 6 a.m. we've got amazing guests coming up. That 100th episode is on its way, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, make sure you follow us on the podcast provider, and I'm really excited to bring that to you and also continue on from that. It's not the end. So David, thank you for your time again.
Thanks, Stuart.
And ladies and gents, I'll see you again next week, 6 a.m. Wednesday morning. Take care. Bye.